Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with. I'm Gladys Mizrahi, and our guest today is a dynamic entrepreneur in the event industry that has reinvented his company due to the pandemic. I know we have touched on the event industry many times, but today we wanted to share some thoughts regarding the current situation we're in as numbers continue to rise. With almost 1.5 million cases just in Florida and over 23,000 deaths, there are 65,000 people hospitalized as of today. So we wanted to share our thoughts on what is our responsibility as event planners and event producers during this surge of cases. We understand that the event and hospitality industry has been hit the hardest, and a lot of the companies have had to close after 1 year of being out of jobs, being out of clients, and while others are doing events because they have to work, we totally understand. But how far does our responsibility in this, and are we contributing to the spread by agreeing to plan an event? So for today's conversation, I want to introduce and welcome my friend Jeff Greene. So
Hi,
Jeff,
good morning. Good morning, Gladys. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
10 months and I'm still alive. And healthy. That's really the important part. Fortunately, my family and my closest friends that are around me, we've all been able to maintain our health, and no one close by has gotten COVID. None of our family and friends. So we've done the right things, which is kind of what this meeting is about, doing the right things.
Correct. So tell us a little bit about how you have reinvented yourself during this pandemic, because I know that you have said no to a lot of the events.
Correct.
So what are you doing to
Well,
overcome
so
this?
So the first thing we did was, after the first panic right in the beginning of dealing with, postponements and cancellations, one of the first things that we did to get back with business is say, okay, what are our abilities at the level we're at today? And by that, I mean, we had a lot of people that were furloughed, that were out there looking to do their own thing. I mean, we were all in a panic because this was something that we really, as a society, the world, none of us were prepared for this. So we each have to look inside and say, okay, what am I able to do? What can I personally do? And then from there, engage further out. So you start with yourself and you say, okay, what can I do? If you're good at cooking, maybe you wanted to start a cooking show, and that was a way you could go into something. Though it may not be related to your business, but you have people in your audience that friends, colleagues that you can draw in, and maybe that ended up going into something, and you pivoted to something that was non-related, but it was something you're able to do. So every one of us kind of had to look at what we individually could do, and then from there build out. With us, I would say the first pivot, beyond things that I did for the industry, as a business, the first thing was virtual graduations. So we saw the need with myself and colleagues around the country. We were talking about, wow, this graduation thing, look what's happening. Oh, my kids, and it literally started with one of our friends. His daughter runs in and says, "Oh my God, they're canceling prom. Oh my God, they're canceling graduation." So we being in the production business, we were all, hey, what can we do? So we came up with a concept, three of my friends together around the country. We all came up with this concept for virtual graduations and quickly jumped into creating sample demos that using kids and friends and neighbors to record videos. And we created a demo of what a virtual graduation would look like if we were to produce it. The fortunate thing was everybody started talking about virtual graduations on a national level, so we took our product and we started marketing it around the country to different school boards and different school systems and individual schools, charter schools, private schools, things like that as well. And we were very, very, very fortunate that we got a lot of schools that loved our product and had that need. They were not meeting; they were virtual, and more so. What we did is we looked at the tools that we have. You know, in our case, we're a video production company as well as an entertainment company and a photography studio and an event production company. So we have all the tools in house. Although we're not going out and producing a live event, we have the ability in house to do certain things. So we, knowing how to do videos, for example, we basically came up with a great workflow, and that was where my strength is creating workflow systems, systemizing and templatizing things. So I created a system with along with my friends of that this is A, B, C, D, and wrote it all out and basically sold the concept to schools. So they all bought in, and that was great. We were able to produce a product that still to this day we have schools already looking forward that possibly this year they'll need to do it again. So we may have a lot of those schools coming back as repeat customers because we pivoted early and we using our technology and what we could do internally. I had 5 editors working in order to do it, so I was able to bring 5 editors and employ 5 editors through the process. And my staff, some of my staff, and some former staff members who were also out of work, but they had worked for me in the past, and I knew I could trust their skills. And we were able to produce some excellent product, better than what the school systems like Dade or Broward County were able to do. Amazingly, they had similar, but not even as good as ours. So we were proud with that. Moving forward, though, everybody was going on Zoom. I mean, Zoom exploded from 10 million users a year ago to over a billion with a B today that they have daily. So that it's an amazing growth. And the good thing about that technology is that everybody quickly learned how to use it, whether you were an elementary school kid or whether you're a grandparent. It was a very
Even
easy.
though we're all muted always.
Yeah, but what happened with the what happened with that technology is we started looking at, okay, what can we do in the event business to help bring back things? So we started with things like game shows, meetings that we were all doing every day. It was like, okay, but what could we do to engage these meetings a little bit more? And we brought in game shows, we brought in mentalists, we started marketing our services out to companies, and it's like, hey, we can produce this for you. You're already doing a meeting, but let us bring in the element that's missing. A straightforward meeting of talking heads is going to last so long before you start losing people's attention. One of the things in the beginning with the whole virtual meeting platform was, and I think this is probably where the problem is with education, is that there's only so much screen time that anybody can deal with before
Right.
they're bored. And there was no guidelines for the event industry. So quickly, again, with colleagues around the country and samplings that every one of us were doing meetings and in our own markets, and we were finding that there becomes a level where you get to be bored. Okay, how much time is that? So we kind of found that 90 minutes was the sweet spot. If you can do an event no longer than 90 minutes and get your entire event done in 90 minutes, you can keep people's attention. Beyond that, you really start losing them. And what was happening was some people were trying to produce their own events, were trying to produce these, 2-hour, 3-hour meetings and all that, and realizing that they're losing people and things aren't getting accomplished, which goes back to the education. These kids are in school 6 hours, 7 hours, and they're all doing it online. You're losing the attention. We're talking about short attention span theater. That's what I like to call it, short attention span theater.
I like
Um,
the short attention span.
Short attention span theater, yeah, and I say that about today's generation, the millennial and Z generation. They live in short attention span theater. That's why TikTok and YouTube and all these different video formats and all that are so popular, because it's short attention span.
It's
They
great.
got you like in a
Correct.
minute. Beyond a minute, they can't concentrate. So the super ADD or ADHD generation has made short attention span theater popular. Of course, business people, we all can handle more detail and longer lengths of conversations, but it has to be engaging. So with friends and colleagues around the country, we sort of came up with our own, for our purposes, for our clients, when we take new business on, hey, here's our set of guidelines that we've come up with that will help simplify your meeting and your flow. And then from that, people would say, oh, well, you seem to know what you're doing. Can you run our meeting for us? And that was where it became, okay, great. So, instead of having a Zoom account that handles 100, I have a Zoom account that handles 500 people. Why? Because I get called to do meetings that might have hundreds of people around the world or around the country on them, and I can be the host of it. And with the pro services and the technology, we have more than just a computer. We have mixing boards,
It's a
video
whole
switchers.
production,
It's a
correct?
production like you would see in a meeting at a conference, only instead of being shown on a video screen to an audience that's there live, the video screen is the internet, and everybody's tuned into that. And the faces, you don't usually at a conference project the faces up on the screen of the audience, but in this case, they are there. So being able to use those tools. Let's face it, things like Skype, WebEx meetings have been around for a long time. Microsoft with their Teams, Google with their Meets have upped the ante a little bit in theirs, but Zoom was the new kid on the block. They came along with a better algorithm, better software, and quickly expanded because it was easy to use. That ease was the breakthrough for why video conferencing took off. I mean, Microsoft, Google, all the big companies who've been doing this for years are scratching their heads and saying, how did they do it? How did they get away
How
with
did
it so quickly?
how it now became a noun?
Right. And part of it was timing. Part of it was timing. There's no question of it, and part of it. And by the way, Zoom is not a 1-year-old company. Zoom has been around for a
No,
number
no,
of years,
no. But they
but
took off because it was simple,
it was
like you said,
simple. It was
very
simple. That's
simple.
correct. So that platform, everybody wanted to be on that. So instead of fighting it, instead of saying, "Oh, but there's a better platform for this and there's a better platform for that," we kept getting customers saying, "Yeah, but we have Zoom. We have Zoom. Oh, our people know Zoom." So it was like, "Okay, great. We're just gonna embrace Zoom." Fortunately, Zoom saw the same thing happening, and they have since introduced a lot of products. But I'm not going to go into that because it's not about Zoom. It's about pivoting. And what we've done with what we've been able to do with virtual is literally bring in entertainment elements to a meeting. This morning, you and I had a meeting with a group of people, industry professionals here from Focus Miami, and we started off the meeting with a 10-minute game show. And the game show was fun, engaging, had questions involving current events as well as questions related to the group itself. That type of thing is a good icebreaker. It's a good way to get people engaged in conversation, sort of in a meeting where you're not sitting around a conference table. It lets people feel like they're a part of something because they're answering questions. You can do polling. It doesn't have to be a game show. You could just use virtual polling and things where in the middle of a meeting you just pop in one or two polls. You pop it up on screen. So we could be having this conversation we're having now, and there could be a group of us, and I could say, okay, great. So let's take a poll, and boom, just take an instant poll. Obviously, these things need
Right.
pre-planning. You have to plan them in advance, but you do that, and it just engages people, makes people wake up again, it makes people get engaged. Um,
What I
in the
found
future,
more was, yes, the concentration part of
in,
it.
in the
Because
future,
it got not only the engagement, but it got you were concentrated on the questions. You wanted to win. So it was different because now what I've seen is that when you go to a meeting, you're presently at a meeting. In
yes,
Zoom, there's the other screen with all my emails going in. There's the phone that you can look at with nobody looking at you and judging you because you're answering something,
text.
text message. And that's the part that we've had to compete with.
Yeah, in a
That's,
live meeting, granted, if you were with your boss sitting in a live meeting around a conference table and your cell phone,
yeah, no
buzzes in
way.
or something like
That's
that,
a
you wouldn't be able to
no-no.
get away with that. Virtually, you can. Virtually, you can just have out of your sight, like I could be looking down on my cell phone real quick and looking up, and I can answer a response, which we've found many times are people within the community, within the meeting, instead of using the chat features of the meeting, they're using their cell phones to chat with one another. There's no question. I've had times we did an event where my production team was in Seattle, New Jersey, and here. That was how we did the production for this one particular event, and we were communicating between us with little notes to each other, through our phones because it was a little bit easier because it was we were doing a client event, so we don't want our conversations being visible in the chat, or I should say recorded in the chat, not visible, because you can chat
You can
individually
do
with
it
people.
privately, but
You can do
yes,
private, but that's being recorded. It's still being recorded. It's still
recorded.
being documented, and the owner of the account can still see those things. So so the idea basically would be, you know, yeah, chat on the side, that you're doing, but for productivity reasons. We're not doing it, we're not getting distracted from the meeting. We're using it for productivity.
That's a
I,
total different part.
yeah,
So before we side, before we take a side note from our conversation of today, because I know that you and I can talk events forever,
certainly.
I've been seeing that there are two trends. Corporate events totally going virtual, and social events are coming back in person. So, for example, with the numbers really, really increasing because numbers are really high, um, I think this is the result of the travel, of Thanksgiving, of everybody saying, no, we're going to do it, we'll take the risk. But we've had more than 23,000 deaths in Florida. So this is serious. So I wanted to ask you something. Um, Events like IMEX, Frankfurt, that's held in May of 2021, has already canceled. So this is a guideline of what we're looking into. We're not going to be in the clear even before the summer. So we're now looking realistically until September,
Hmm.
the fall, more or less. We're going into a repeat of 2020, whether we like it or not. But I've seen that there's a lot of people actually doing personal events, especially weddings. There was just a wedding this week that had over 300 people. Yes, the venue was big enough for 500, but there were 300 people. And just the wedding party was 50 family members with no masks because of the pictures and the whole thing. So that's a little concerning to me. And that is the question that I wanted to touch on. Where is our responsibility as event planners in being able to permit an event and then being a super spreader?
First of all, super spreader, that's the word. Our industry is a super spreader industry, not by choice. We certainly don't want to be that, but let's face it, we
No,
are in the super spreader business,
correct.
and it's not a good thing. I think that, you know, socially we have to try and be as responsible as we can. We have Americans, we are the most arrogant. I have a very strong word I'd like to say, but we are the most arrogant population in the world. I don't care if if there's world leaders that are arrogant.
I'm,
As an
I
entire
totally
community
have to
in
disagree with you because there are a lot of people in Latin America that are even more arrogant that if they have the money to throw this huge event, it doesn't matter because I have money and I'm not going to get sick.
Yeah, and it's that attitude, whether it's here or there or wherever it's at. I mean, it's happening all over the world. There's no question about it. And there are segments of the population, but I mean, as a nation, I just think if you were to somehow try to document it per capita, we have the most arrogance, I think. And I think that the way to document it, quite frankly, is look at the number of cases per capita in our country versus other countries. Again, and I say per capita because there are countries that have that have what they consider super high numbers, but to us, Dade County might have higher numbers than an entire country.
But I
Uh,
think it
you know,
was based on something else. I think it was really politicized based on each person.
well, The problem that we have is that we don't like rules. Our country was founded on freedom, and the freedom that people can make decisions and all that, which is a good thing. But at the same time, our freedom is, because we give ourselves, and we have, and we've, this freedom that we so cherish, we take it to the next level. We are a little bit inappropriate with our freedom. Just because you have free speech doesn't mean that you have the freedom to call me names, right? That would be racism, let's say, or prejudices or things like that. And that's, our country has a big problem with that. Um, you're free to say things and act certain ways so long as it doesn't affect other people. And that's where the line has gotten grayed. People think, look, I can do whatever I want. I want to have a wedding for 300 people. I'm going to have a wedding for 300 people. It's my day. The arrogance and, you know, life imitates art. When these reality wedding shows started 20 years or so ago, that's when I started seeing, up until then, brides were very sweet. They were
Oh,
there
then
planning
it
with
was the bridezillas.
they were planning with their moms. They were, they were looking at tradition was important to them and the family. There was all these things. As these wedding shows with these bridezillas, and obviously that's the name of one show, but all these shows that have created this attitude that, oh, the wedding is all about the bride. The wedding is all about the bride. Well, look, it's about the bride and her family, not just her. So when she has an attitude, I just canceled an event. The client asked to cancel it. We were trying to encourage them to postpone it. But the bride got finally tired because I'm not going to have a wedding now. I'm not going to have a wedding. If I can't have a wedding with 150 people dancing without masks and doing whatever they want and getting pissed drunk, that's exactly what she said to me, getting pissed drunk, on the dance floor, then I'm not going to have a wedding and nobody's going to be able to celebrate it with me. That was the way she said it to me. I'm like, well, okay, you could have it in probably
Yeah,
six
but
months
it
or a
becomes
year.
about the person. It doesn't become about, okay,
The
I
celebration.
won. It's not even about the celebration.
It's not
It's
about the
about
celebration. It's about me, me,
protecting the
me. I
parents,
want this. It's
but
ego and
protecting the
attitude.
parents.
And ego is the worst poison there is. Ego is the absolute worst poison there is. So you have that person with that poison personality that it's all about me. I got to do it this way. And unfortunately, they start, they're influencers over their family and their friends. Yeah, in some cases, family members, again, what I said a few moments ago about, 25 years ago, every bride who walked in our door came in with her mom to help her plan the wedding, and parents paid for weddings a lot more so than they do today. Now that it's sort of a compilation of some parents don't even help contribute to their kids' weddings, but when it's a
It's
compilation of all that, today the bride and groom the bride more so is saying, this is me, this is my day, this is my way. I'm going to have my wedding the way I feel like having it, and mom and dad are participating in the strictly writing the checks, and that's probably about it because they have no say or very little say over the final product. So you have
worth
this
the bride
20
is paying
something,
for
you have
her
this 20
wedding.
something in South Florida. You have this 20 something year old who's used to going out to live until 5 or 6 in the morning, to Story or to some of the places in Wynwood, and partying like, the world doesn't matter around them, so long as they Monday through Friday, they're responsible citizens. On the weekend, it doesn't really matter. And what's happened is we've become super spreaders because of that mentality and that attitude.
But
So
you're allowing it. That's the problem. There's someone that is allowing that event to happen. But let
sure,
me ask you something, because what you said, we are a country of freedom. But I remember it took like 3 or 4 years to educate the people on wearing a seatbelt because it was for your safety. And they started putting fines, they started doing anything, and now you get into a car and you're like a robot, you put your seatbelt on and you go.
right.
So why is it so difficult for people now to wear a mask for your safety? It's
Uh,
exactly the same thing,
yeah,
and you can't afford
it,
to be educated for the next 4 or 5 years.
I think that, and not to be political, but to say this one statement because I think it does relate specifically to this. I think Trump would have won the election had he said one thing. He could have said, "Look, I don't personally like masks. I don't believe in them, but the people out there, the medical professionals feel and that you should be wearing a mask." Or if he'd have said something like, "Listen, wear your masks. It can't hurt." If he just said it that way, like he didn't really believe in it, but if he just said it can't hurt, the worst it can do is nothing. But the best it can do is save your lives. Had he said something as simple as that, he probably would have won the election. But the whole attitude of no mask, no mask, no mask was ignorant and asinine, because the facts are that we're breathing on each other. We know it's transmitted that way. And the events that we do require, go out and dance and try not breathing heavily
That's what I
dancing.
was,
Okay.
no, that's
You
what I
know,
was going to ask. How do
when
you do a wedding of, let's not say 300 people, but 150 people, and being responsible and trying to avoid that everybody keeps social distance when dancing to a really Latin beat?
so
It's
you dance, it's a
impossible.
physical activity, you're going to breathe heavier. You're sitting at a table and the music is playing loudly in the room. You want to have a conversation across the table with you.
So you're
You have to
speaking
speak
loud.
louder and more breath, and you're exhaling. Your breath is traveling 10 feet. Just because you have to speak louder to cross that table, because the room's ambient. So it's not just about being on the dance floor. It's not just being bellying up to the bar and a bunch of people are gathered at the bar in close proximity. In fact,
But
that's probably at a wedding, that's probably one of the least concerns, because people aren't really standing at a bar, unlike at a nightclub or a bar where they're trying to get
correct.
drinks.
No, we're not
But
talking about a nightclub, but the other
but
part
in the
is,
case of a wedding or a bar mitzvah or a corporate social gathering where you have, it's a social event where you're going to have dancing and you're going to have music and you're going to have people seated together in groups and conversations going on. And even when the people get up and they all go to the bar to get a drink, there's two or three of them standing there having a conversation, or almost anywhere in the room, there's always people gathered having conversations. It just takes um,
correct, but
one
with
person to be sick. Okay, and here's the thing: they
and
can
it
show up.
instead
You
to
you put
300 and 400 people.
yeah.
That one person.
Oh, that happened. That wedding in Maine, was it?
No, wait, that was where I was going because there was two cases. One when the pandemic was just starting, that there was a little town in New York, upstate New York, when the guy was a lawyer working in New York and he didn't know he got infected. He thought it was just the flu, and the whole town had to be quarantined because it was a super spreader. He went to services that weekend. He had a bar mitzvah. He also had Shabbat dinner, and it totally spread out. So that was one. And the other part is that the other day, where I was consulting with somebody on doing the event, they said, no, we're keeping the tables with your family. Like if your family is six, we'll seat you with your family. If your family is eight, we'll do a table of eight. That's totally fine. But you are with your family 24/7. So you're inviting the people to go to an event. And of course, the first thing you see is your friend in the next table. You're going to tell me you're not going to stand up, go, and say hi. So that is exactly how we're spreading it. Not even in the dance floor, not even taking a drink. It's just even the small, tiny detail of saying hi to the people on the next table.
Here's an example for you. Um, we all know that most holiday shopping went virtually this year, right? So the malls supposedly weren't so crowded. Now, I didn't go during the whole holiday shopping center. I didn't go to any retailer at all because I don't do that much anyway. But I just was not going to go in the crowd any store that might be crowded. Well, someone I spoke to, his wife did regular holiday shopping and wherever she went to, but she did her holiday shopping. And then they had Christmas dinner, and it was his wife, and the kids, her mother, and I think like three other people were there. It was just a small family gathering, which everybody, no, no, we're all clean. We've all been tested and everything like that, and they'd all been tested. But his wife on the 26th started feeling a little weird, and they decided to go get checked, and it turns out she got coronavirus. Now the only place she had been to was holiday shopping. That's it. She said she was not really near people. She, stayed socially distanced, if you will, and things like that. This is an airborne spreading, okay? If you can go to a mall or to a store and you pass by somebody and get it, that someplace where you're not necessarily so crowded, at least this year it wasn't so crowded in the stores, and she could get it. And then she feels perfectly fine. She goes and she has a family dinner. Every one of them got it now. So the other seven of them that were there, they all got it. But they didn't get it right away because on Christmas Day, she still was fine. It wasn't until the day after that all of a sudden she started getting it because it takes a few days to incubate. So
Not
she
even
might have got it on the 23rd or whatever it was, the 22nd to 23rd when she was out shopping. She might have gotten it and she felt perfectly fine. And then she spread it to everybody else who was at their party, at their
that.
little dinner. And this is a small family event. This was not a big event like we're
We're
talking
not
about.
even talking about the new.
But seven more people got ill. Now imagine had she not gotten tested on the 26th, okay, and then called everybody and said, "Hey, I just found out I had coronavirus. You all should get checked, quarantine, stop, whatever." Had she not said that, imagine had she gone to a wedding on let's change whatever the date was. She had a date. She was feeling fine. She went to a wedding and she was there and she had no idea, or to any a bar mitzvah, whatever. And she's there and she's saying hello to people and she's got her mask on, which she did have her mask on at the store, by the way, and everybody else did in the store as well, she says. So now she goes and she's at this event and she spreads it to one or two people and then they turn around and spread it to a few more. That's all it takes. That is all it takes.
One
So
person
as
can.
event professionals, we're all saying, okay, look, we don't want to lose income. I mean, that's let's face it,
That's the main thing. It's all
we're
about the
all
income, but
well, we're all in a bad position that way right now.
yeah,
Many of us are not going to be returning back to business. There's many colleagues in this industry that I've spoken to that will not be returning back to this business. We're pivoting. We're still in business, but we're pivoting. We're changing how we're doing things. And when we return, we're not going to be the same company that we were before because just everything's different. I mean, you've lost staff, and how are you going to ramp up that quickly? It's not like you're going to pick up the phone and say, okay, tomorrow everybody show up. Because a lot of those people over the last 10 months have had to find other things for themselves when
maybe they
they're
liked it, and maybe you're going to have to train a new team of people to come back.
right.
So, but we
There's
have,
opportunity in there, though. There's
correct,
opportunity in
there's
there.
a lot of opportunities as well as seeing an industry that's going to have to be changed. But I'm still saying, and I don't want to be negative, I don't want to be like the bad person, but
What's
it
our
is
responsibility?
a responsibility.
Our responsibility as planners and event producers, I got a lot of calls for people wanting to have parties. And just by the opening conversations, the things that they said, they don't know who they're talking to, right? They're just making a phone call. They saw my name or our company advertised, whatever. And the questions that they started asking, I immediately knew these were like people just trying to get big parties. I don't know why. This started in about August, I would say. All of a sudden, I started getting, I'm not exaggerating, as many as 20 calls in one day just for people wanting to have these parties. It was like almost like, oh, you know, we're
Because there
free. We got
was,
to go out. We got to go crazy now, And they were, and in most cases, people, the questions were like, you know, how late can we hire you till? You know, how late can we hire you?
because there
That's
was
an
a
odd opening
misconception.
question. You know,
There was total
you know,
misconception that if you do a huge party and everybody get infected, then you're done.
yeah, right.
That was
You know,
like a mentality of the
and
huge parties.
with amongst our freedoms as Americans, we also have this. We're also a very litigious society. So imagine you're a business, a venue, okay, and you're doing your best to keep things compliant. You're doing your best, but you can't control people who come in the room. Yes, maybe you pulled out your little gun and you tested for fever and things like that. But there's ways
But you
around that.
cannot, correct. You need a triple staff. You feel horrible, sounding like a policeman. Put your mask on. Stay 6 feet apart, and it doesn't contribute to the whole ambience.
No, but you do all that, and guess what? A number of people get sick, and then they all file a lawsuit against you because you didn't do enough to prevent them from getting sick. Why aren't they suing the bride for having the event to begin with? Okay, they're not, because they're suing who they think have deep pockets. You know, they're suing. Oh, you're a business, you're insured. You're not losing anything.
No,
The
but
insurance is
remember
going to
that our
pay you.
insurance doesn't cover virus.
They don't
That
know
we
that.
all found out the
Yeah,
hard
right.
way.
But they don't know that. They're just going to find some attorney that's going to say, looking to make a buck, and is going to say, yeah, sure, we'll sue for you. Here's my fees, give me a retainer, and yeah, I'll file suit, do whatever you want. Maybe knowing that they won't get anywhere, but nonetheless, they are going after businesses. By the way, up in upstate, not in upstate New York, in Long Island, there's a number of cases where some of these venues allowed events to go on, and they're now being sued.
Because of
So
spread, or somebody got very sick, or somebody died.
a
Yeah.
number of people, right? Well, a number of people. One
Yes.
one wedding took place in Long Island, and this is and you said something about like 300. I mentioned Maine. There was also right around that time this one bride. She had 150 people. They were limiting, I think, to only 75 or so people they were allowing at venues, but. They were like, well, nobody's going to pay attention. People aren't walking in and inspecting and, things like that. They figured they'd get away with it, right? Well, the venue lost their business license. They lost their liquor license. 200, 300 people got coronavirus, got contracted coronavirus over time. And I believe several people passed away from it. So,
It is
now there's a big lawsuit. But you know who they sued? The venue.
venue.
They didn't sue the bride, but who put on the event? The bride. Now, the venue should not have allowed that many people. I
But
agree.
that's my question. So the person that planned that wedding is it's the person responsible for telling the bride, I am so sorry, you may want this, but we are restricted to this.
Well,
So
yeah.
it is up to us in a certain point. It is up to us. You just said that you said no to a lot of the big
These events, and
events.
that people
And
are
it
asking
would have
for.
made money and you would have been very well, but at what cost?
Right, right. We did do a few weddings. We had a few weddings. Palm Beach County, for some reason, is a little bit more, open, if you will. So
Yes.
we did in October. We did a wedding for. We did a couple weddings up there. One was for like well, it was planned for 150 people. 72 showed up, which allowed the room to be socially distanced. But my entire staff wore masks the entire event. That was a requirement that I had for everybody to wear masks inside the venue and as they were
Even if the
working and everything.
guests were not wearing masks?
So the hotel's requirement was any vendors and all staff need to wear masks everywhere. All guests need to wear masks anywhere in public areas. But once they were in the ballroom, they were allowed to not wear their masks. I think that the rule was meant to be more so once you're at your table, you don't have to wear your masks.
But that's what
But
I'm saying.
yeah,
The
but they
table
didn't
next door, so it's a
they
big
didn't
risk.
enforce that. Yeah, they didn't enforce once the people were dancing, nobody wearing masks. Actually, that's not true. Not nobody. Double negative there. I'm sorry. There was a handful of people wearing masks on the dance floor, but the majority of the people weren't. However, with the size of the room, because it was still the room that would have been there for 150 people, and how distanced the tables were, and the size of the dance floor. They still had a dance floor that would have been set up for 150 people. So the dance floor looked empty even when it was full because there was a lot of room. There was a lot more space around. So yeah, there was times that they were gathered together, and honestly, I didn't follow up to find out if anybody got coronavirus from that. I know nobody on my staff did. So I didn't check with the bride. I hadn't followed
Now
up with her
the
yet.
testing, now we're, some events are moving a little further down, requiring a test. But like you said, you do the test 3 days before, you can get
You can get
infected.
it that afternoon. You can
So,
go have your test in the morning, contract it in the afternoon. Your test come
and
back 2 days later saying you're negative, but in fact you're positive.
So basically, we are responsible in some cases for being super spreaders. And Jeff, we're literally out of time. But if not, we can be here talking about events in forever.
Yes.
Hopefully, we will follow up in a couple of months because I want to follow up with you that if the vaccine would have been planned, the distribution by an event planner, we would have been
That's
vaccinated.
where we needed an event planner. The,
Correct.
the government needs to hire
So,
event planners who know how to organize and manage people and
and
registrations and things
massive
like that.
events and all that to be
Yeah,
able to get the vaccine out. But in the meantime, we need to be responsible.
I agree.
And that is the biggest message that I wanted to leave everybody. Yes, we understand you want to celebrate. We understand it's a difficult year, but we also need to be responsible and respectful to
And
others.
and the first thing they can do to make that, I think it's the responsibility of our industry, of planners in our industry, to make suggestions, strongly suggest to clients what is working and is safe.
What is
And
not?
one is not having the event to begin with right away. Plan it for further down the road. Two, if they still have to have the event, do a micro wedding. Plan a 90-minute small ceremony with a cocktail style reception and hors d'oeuvres, and then be done. The least exposure that people have, the least amount of
Yes.
time, and the least number of people. What's wrong with having 25 people of your
And do
25 of
a
your family and
year
friends?
anniversary big bash celebration.
It's the bigger events that are the biggest spreaders. I mean, a small event can be a spreader too. I mean, as I mentioned, those people who did
It's
a
an
Christmas
average
dinner.
of 75 people per one person that has it.
Right. So if you
You
limit the
can
number of people, if you have 20, 25 people, you're going to reduce the possibility that so you can still have an event. You can have a more intimate event. Heck, if you have a budget for your wedding that is whatever the budget is, and you're planning for 150 people, you could have for half that budget a luxury of high-end event for 25 people at maybe on the beach at a beachfront property or a property, a venue you never would be able to afford, but you've already made a budget for your wedding. So instead of spreading it amongst 150 people, reduce it down to 25 people, use the budget to go someplace that you would not be able to have had your wedding. Imagine having a wedding at Vizcaya that you would not have been able to afford for 150 people, but you're going to get these absolutely stunning pictures and video and things, and that's your memory. So a more
correct.
intimate event with 25 people, but gives you so much more memories to cherish. The memories are what matter here. So plan a lovely small event instead of going to something big, and that's what planners do. They can bring you the right locations, the right venues, to have something that
The
your
right
memory of.
advice, the right advice
Right.
to make a safe event. But Jeff, with that, I have to finish it. Thank you so, so much. It was a pleasure speaking to you. And everybody, thank you for being with us. See you next week. And above all, stay safe.
Thank you.